right, so I watched Lady Ballers, and yes, many of you saw my trailer reaction and breakdown, and I was actually interested in watching this, and I was interested in trying to have a comedy that would push the envelope and be a little more triggering. Well, I think all of that is really good for comedy. I really want to like this movie, right? So, gave it a go. I'm going to tell you what I think about it. And I'm actually curious because I haven't watched anyone's reviews or responses. I don't know if I'm going to be on an island with this one or not because I would assume this is going to be a very divided thing, right? I think because it is a politically triggering thing and not just oh, it's offensive comedy or whatever. I don't find this particular topic funny or something like that. No, this is politics, right? Because this has like become like and the ideology is the gag. And the premise is pretty simple, right? Jeremy Boring plays this washed up coach. He'd been a high school coach. They won a couple of championships. They have like a cheesy monologue thing, and they go on to win their third title. And then we fast forward to the current time. I don't even think he's coaching high school. I think he's more like a like a rec league or something like that. Anyway, he gets kicked out of the club because he makes a comment about someone stealing the catalytic converter on his car, which, by the way, I had to have Mrs. Pops explain it to me. And even after we watched the movie, I'm still like very meh on that joke. I really just am oblivious to the catalytic converter crime wave that swept through our country. I totally did not get that joke like at all. Anyway, so then he ends up taking a job at what's called the Dollhouse, which is kind of like a Hooters. And instead of having hot ladies there, they're all cross-dressed or trans. And he runs across Chris, who is one of his star athletes from that basketball team. And they have some sort of like, we'll get to their other character. And they're going to enter Chris into this athletic contest to win a bunch of money because he is trans. Now it becomes like a marketable thing in the press and all that. So, he's brave and everything, right? The ex-wife is now remarried to Chris, who is like the uber soy boy liberal stereotype played by Matt Walsh, who's everything opposite to what he is in real life. And all this kind of lends for all of these sort of like newsworthy trigger moments, all of that manifesting into this thing, supposedly going to push the envelopes. So let's go through a little bit of the other stuff in this movie, and we'll kind of go through it. I'll go through some of my thoughts and evaluation. So the little montage in the opening there's not much in this. When they cut to him recruiting all of the other former players, they have these sequences where they're all doing some different things, different sports. But this is the original event with Chris, right? So literally like dude in a wig, he's just going to outrun everybody. Like it's just that cliche, right? So this is that early setup to the film. And then of course, then they get the idea, well, we'll get all the guys back together, become a basketball team. But they're like dominating like every sport and all this. So they use global games because they're not allowed to use the term Olympics, that kind of thing. So I'm actually curious in this shot, by the way, when I watched this, I wondered how many of these are who in the Daily Wire is who in this background, this sort of like overreaction in this background. Because that is part of what makes the movie kind of work for folks is that it's the Daily Wire people playing the Daily Wire people. This is the ex-wife, and you get matched. Well, and this is the catalytic converter gag and him getting tased. So yeah, just all these different moments. And okay, so this is the journalist joke. So so another plot point. Like, there's a lot of this, right? Is how bad and awful and exploitive the journalists are. Like she's in on the gag that he's just a dude. And it's like, no, you're going to pretend to be trans. It's going to make us rich. I'm going to be famous. You're going to do whatever. And then she has this like faux sexual attraction to Jeremy's character, right? So all this kind of plays along until they're going to, this is them getting back together to play basketball, right? And that's the other part of the gag. And then this was the parody. No, this is the daughter that he learns from. We'll get back to that. Yeah, and then this is, okay, so and this is the parody of Dylan Mulvaney and that kind of thing. So here's my thing. The movie should have worked way better than it did. Everything that's really, really good or funny to me was in the trailer. Everything in the film was a letdown. The first hour, it was not 90 minutes. It was like almost 2 hours. The first hour was extremely slow and boring and uninteresting. I was so bored out of my mind. Like, oh my gosh, just get on with it forever. Some of the best things would be kind of off camera, right? Because there's this thing where they've got all the five guys back together. They're all being played up as celebrities in the media because they're trans athletes. And then they're like superstars in all these other sports. Like, oh, I qualified in swimming, I qualified in this. And all that happens off camera. So the montage of that probably would have been a good addition to the stuff that we saw in the trailer, because in the trailer, every single gag was spoiled. That is literally all of the best elements of this movie. It is very bland and generic. If you didn't like Barbie because you're on the right wing, then the left wing is not going to like Lady Ballers. It's all very much newsworthy type shtick, and it was also played very safe. It's a TV-14 movie. There's a few curse words in it, but it's all played. They bloop out the F bombs when Shapiro's referee is like, F and blah blah blah, whatever, and there's a comment, whatever. It's almost like played too safe, like it's never traffic. I'm not telling them they should have gone that way. I'm just saying, like, it almost feels like a generic, almost like the Hallmark problem, right? It's like it's low budget, but it's shot well, like it looks good. The actors are all just they're themselves showing up. I don't know that any of that is really impressive acting, because it felt like, I mean, Matt Walsh's character was probably the best character in the thing because it was so radically opposite who he is. I just thought it was irritating because he kept doing this same thing where he does his hands forward or whatever, and I thought it was like a weird shtick thing that they must have picked up from somebody who does it in real life, but I've never met anyone. So I expected more like weird, quirky things for him to do, but he just kind of kept doing the same thing. So I just got irritated. I got sick of it. But he was the most, I say, like, out of, like, Shapiro was just Shapiro showing up on set. Jeremy Boring just seemed okay. Like he was just going through the motions. Wasn't anything terrible. But as far as like all the other hosts, like Michael Knowles or Brett Cooper or Clavin, like they're just who they are. There wasn't anything special about any of those. And I'm not real familiar with like the Crane brothers and some of the other stuff, but it was all okay, because other than the parody of the Dylan Mulvaney character, there wasn't anything really that over the top. And that was like one bit. It didn't keep going. There was a Bud Light joke that they're drinking Bud Light, but there was no one upping the ante or anything like that in this movie. It just felt very safe and generic. It's trying to make it seem like, oh, because we're talking about gender ideology, therefore that's the risk. But I'm like, yeah, but okay. I mean, you're just saying the jokes that you say amongst it. Maybe that's it. That's what Mrs. Pop said. She didn't like it at all. She thought I actually felt like I was in trouble having her watch this with me, because she found it completely boring and uninteresting. And she felt like it was like a bunch of guys who have jokes amongst themselves and think they're funny, but it doesn't translate to the rest of us. That's how she felt. I can't really argue with that assessment, because the trailer was everything. And if you've seen the trailer, it's like, well, that's kind of the gag. So South Park did it better. If you're not familiar with the famous Macho Man Savage episode, it was season 23, episode 7. I went back and watched it. It's called PC Babies. And what they did with the writing was they connected the two things. They had the girls invading the boys' D&D club, and then they had Randy Macho Man Savage invading women's sports. And then ultimately what they did was they converged the two through a faux Muppet Babies show called PC Babies. So then whenever they're having it come together, it's like, well, you've got to talk to the PC Babies about it so that they can understand it, they can get it. It's like, it was such clever writing with how they made the whole episode kind of come together. Lady Ballers doesn't do anything. It's very much, you know exactly where it's going. You know exactly what's going to happen. When it turns serious, because literally the third act is pretty much void of any significant jokes. Okay. Now, the other major complaint I have is there were two extremely meta moments. There's like a Jeremy's razor, like, stop the movie. We're going to be very self-aware that we're Daily Wire selling Jeremy's razor and Jeremy's whatever. And I'm like, okay, and then at the very end of the movie, Candace Owens is in a car with Matt Walsh's character, who just takes his wig off and it's like, haha, I was really Matt Walsh all along. And don't you see what I did there? And I'm like, okay. Anyway, so no desire to sit through it again. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's hardly a game changer or anything interesting. I feel bad for people who've run out and paid like, $100 or whatever it costs to be a subscriber to watch this movie, because it is just okay. I think they should have just gone for it, man. Just a lot more of the physical comedy and showcasing that which is not funny. And the only way to make that funny is to make us feel uncomfortable and having it being over the top. So anyway, that's my take on it. I don't even know. It'll be so interesting now to go back and see reviews, because I don't even know who's done reviews on this. So yeah, feel free to let me know if you guys have seen it, what you guys think. Am I off base or not? Listen, I was very amused by this, but I can't say that I was already amused and entertained by the trailer. The movie didn't really offer me much else than that. If I just watched the trailer again, that was pretty much the highlights. I didn't need to sit through the whole movie, and Mrs. Pops is probably going to hold it against me now. So that's my review and my thought on it. Take care, everybody. I am Pops.